Hey, what's up guys? Today I'm going to be bringing you a Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy review. So let me just start off saying that the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy contains the original 3 Crash Bandicoot games: Crash Bandicoot 1, Crash Bandicoot 2, Cortex Strikes Back, and Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped. I don't really want to call them remasters, because remasters is basically you take the old games, you just touch them up, and you just put them in the new ones to, you know, make them up to current graphic standards. But I feel like I know that they've added more stuff, because not only did they touch the game up graphic wise, they also tried to redo the voice actings, redo all the voice lines for each character. Some of the actual voice actors weren't able to come back, but the majority of the voice actors were able to return. Cortex, Ripperoo, Coco, I believe Aku Aku, and Uku Uku were, the same voice actors, but there's some that didn't make it back, like Tiny Tiger. His voice sounds a little different, but that's the thing about redoing a game from the ground up and redoing their voice lines is it's sometimes hard to get their voice actors back. But other than that, I feel like everything was pretty good voice wise. Also, they retouched and redone the music. Most of the music is pretty much the same as the original. Some have been touched up, like the Cortex boss fights musics. They've actually been updated to sound a little different than what they were originally, which is, I don't know if I like the original better. So I don't know. That would have to be your feelings on that one. But they did do that. They did touch up some of the music and add some additions here and there or change things. But let's go into the 3 games. Crash Bandicoot 1 is probably the hardest of the 3, just because you are very limited. You just have jumps and spins and some really odd platforming levels in there, which I'll talk about later. And then you got Crash Bandicoot 2, which adds slide jumps, which actually lets you jump higher, and then goes a little faster. And then at the end of the game, you actually get these things called like sprint boots or something. And then it's also introduced nitro crates, which is the green crates that explode and they jump up and they mess with you emotionally and mentally. With Crash 3, they've added more. They've added perks like double jump, tornado spin, the Wampa fruit cannon. Just some little changes here and there. But also, one of the cool things about each Crash game is that the story continues right after each other. So if you beat Crash 1, the ending cutscene carries over to Crash 2 and then continues the story there, and it gives you like a little peek of what happened during the transition from Crash 1 to Crash 2. And then same thing with Crash 3. After beat Crash 2, it goes into Crash 3. It's actually really cool how they did the storytelling. I'm glad they kept it in here, because I don't know why they would take it out, but I'm glad they kept it. It's actually pretty cool because it makes you feel more invested and connected to each game. So after you beat Crash 1, you feel like you're immediately, connected with Crash 2, and same thing with going into Crash 3, is just because you already know what happened. You see that's leading like right off into the next game, and then it's just cool. I like the storytelling. It's pretty crazy. And then after the things, I was talking about the levels. Most of the Crash games, it's pretty easy with their platforming. It's just basic platforming. Some of the levels are really easy. It's a lot of hand holding, and then as you progress through the game, it gets a little bit harder, and eventually you'll run into, I call, the stress levels, because they're just ridiculous. And Crash 1 actually holds the most of the stress levels, just because it's Crash 1 and it likes to mess with you. So you got High Road, which is a map that is on a bridge. It's on a bridge, and you have to get like the best timing. You have to do weird things in order to get past it, which you'll see gameplay. You'll see gameplay of all these maps I'm talking about right now, just to give you kind of like an idea and look at what the maps are actually like. You got High Road, which you just go across the bridge. You gotta get your timing jumps. You gotta work around certain things. Work on jumping on ropes. Jumping off of ropes. It's kind of difficult, but once you start practicing, you'll get the hang of it. Then you also got Slippery Climb, which is another Crash 1 level. It's just nothing but like odd jumps and weird timing. It almost throws off your normal sense of timing with the game, just because whatever you think is correct, it's probably not. So you just have to kind of feel like if you're gonna fall, that's probably the best way to jump on Slippery Climbs. And then also with another level called Lights Out, if you have to go through it without getting hit, because you basically rely on Aku Aku to be your source of light, and if you get hit or if you wait too long, it will go out and you're just in pitch black and you can't see anything. So And that one's all about timing and speed running through the level, because if you wait too long, it will just be dark and you can't do anything. And there's certain levels like that, and then also you got Pistons Away and Crash 2. Actually, Crash 2 and Crash 3 have the least of the most difficult levels, and like I was saying before, Crash 1 is probably the most difficult of the three games. And then going back to the levels, you also got Bug Light, which is in Crash 3. It's just, all about timing, like I was talking about, Lights Out. And also any map that requires you to run towards the camera, because it really messes with you, because you feel like you're good and then you're just running straight, and then you realize that there's a nitro crate or there's a TNT crate or there's some kind of weird electric fence. It really throws off your timing. But other than that, these levels are pretty good. I mean, they are kind of like rage inducing, but after you beat them, you feel like you get like a personal satisfaction out of them. So other than that, the levels, it's basic platforming. It gets harder, and then you got these select few levels that are just crazy intense. But these levels aren't where it like breaks the game. I feel like it actually adds value to the game, because once you have easy platforming in most of the levels and you go to these hard levels, you feel like you actually have to like use your brain, or have some kind of skill to get past them. And then once you get past them, you actually feel kind of good about yourself, or at least that's how I feel when I get past these levels. But another weird thing about levels is that they're actually sometimes harder than the boss fights. So the boss fights are actually pretty easy. They don't really tell you what to do for each boss fight. You kind of have to figure them out as you go along. But they're pretty easy to pick up even on the first try. Some of them are a little bit more difficult than the others, but like I said before, they're pretty easy to pick up on what you have to do, and also their timing, their routines, their what they do, and it's easy to pick up on, which is actually kind of funny that usually boss fights are harder than levels, but in Crash Bandicoot's case, it's actually the levels that are a lot harder than the boss fights, which I don't know if it's a good thing. I'll let you guys decide if that's a good thing or not. But it's just funny that the boss fights are actually easier than some of the levels that are in the games itself. Now we're moving on to personal pet peeves of mine, which doesn't really affect the game too much. It's just what I personally dislike about it. So you can add to your own list or your own feelings towards the game, but this is just how I feel. So don't let my personal aggravations of the game, affect the way you look at this. But one of the things is it being too cartoonish. So the original game was supposed to be fun. It was a little serious, but it just had fun. But I feel like now they added some things that make it feel... Let's see, what's the best comparison? I guess if you guys ever watched Teen Titans on Cartoon Network, and then you go to Teen Titans Go, which is ridiculously weird and I guess up to what kids like to watch nowadays. It's kind of like that. It's not to the extent of Teen Titans Go, but it seems like they made it more cartoonish and weird and ridiculous, than the original. But it's just little bits. It's just some of the acting they do and some of the, things they do in the game. But it's not.
You must gather the gems, not the crystals. If you obtain all 42 gems, I can use them to focus a laser. Ah, yes, a laser beam that will destroy Cortex and the space station he has created. Until then, I must use my forces to stop you from gathering crystals.
Too much. The majority of the time it sticks to what it's originally was, with how it acts, how they talk. Another one is Uka Uka. If you guys don't know, if you guys haven't played the original like I have, Uka Uka wasn't introduced until Crash 3. Uka Uka is Aku Aku's evil brother. They're masks. They're floating masks. That's all they are. They're floating masks, but Uka Uka wasn't introduced until Crash 3. But for some reason in the Insane Trilogy, he was added to the first two games, which I don't know how I feel about this. It kind of goes against the story, but I guess it's better for people to be introduced to Uka Uka at the the earlier stages, just because he does actually play an important part in later on the story. So I don't know. That's something I personally do not like, but like I said before, it might actually be better for this game and story itself, just because he does play a better part or a bigger part in the story itself. Now moving past the personal stuff, let's actually go into stuff that does affect the game. There is some weird hitboxes. I think the best word is clunky hitboxes. There's certain times where you're probably jumping on a platform or a bridge or something, and you feel like you hit it, and the character looks like they hit it, but they slip off, or you run past something like, for example, Hog Wild or something like that. You're on this hog and you have to get past these spike tikis, whatever you want to call them, and sometimes it looks like you go past them but you get stuck on them, or if you try to try to jump past one of these I guess roasted hogs on a wheel or something, and you hit it even though you didn't. I don't know, it's just clunky hitboxes. That's actually one of the things that I did not like about this, but it's only with the Insane Trilogy that it has, but it's not too bad. On certain levels it's worse than others, but it's not where you feel like the game is just awful. You can eventually get past it once you start working on timing and you start getting a feel on how when you're supposed to jump, but the hitbox is a little odd at times. It's not a thing that actually breaks the game and it just destroys your fun, but it is there, and I feel like it could be touched up a little bit with an update. I don't know if they're ever going to do an update for this, but that's just one of the things that actually does hurt the game a little bit, is the weird hitboxes. But like I said before, it's not so bad where it ruins your experience. You will have to get past certain levels, with retries and redos until you get the timing part. But eventually, after you do that, you actually feel, like I said, personal satisfaction after you do it, because you're like, I finally got past that stupid stuff. And then you feel good about it, and you move on, and you realize that the next level is even harder, and then you start just pulling your hair out. And then going on to the next thing is some weird controls. So speaking of clunky hitboxes, there's also weird controls. So there's certain things, there's certain levels that make you do certain things, like the Hog Wild, where you have to do some weird timing jumps, but you also have other stuff like bikes in Crash 3 and also jetpacks in Crash 2. It just has weird controls. Sometimes they're a little too loose, or sometimes they're really, really tough, and you basically have to fight the controls to go where you want. But, after you beat them, you do feel good about yourself. You feel like you earned that win on that level. But there's just some weird controls on certain levels. I think there's like 5 levels throughout all 3 games that you actually feel the weird controls. So that's not too bad. There's just a few bad stuff, just running down the bad stuff again. It's just some weird clunky hitboxes on certain levels. It doesn't really hurt your experience that much. It does maybe cause rage, but eventually you'll get over that, and you'll start feeling better as you get the timing down. And then also the weird controls on certain levels, like with the bike levels in Crash 3 or the jetpacks in Crash 2. But those are really the only bad things about it. Going on to the pros. One of the cool things that they added in the Crash Insane Trilogy is leaderboards. So if you guys didn't play the original you basically had to guess or look up online what the times were for these relics. So if you're going for platinum, you have to like basically do trial and error until you finally get the relic, or if you looked it up online, or because somebody else got it. But the leaderboards that they added in the Insane Trilogy actually tell you what times you have to go for in order to get platinum relic, gold relic, bronze relic, and the blue relic, whatever that's called, which is actually a great thing. It's good for people like me that try to 105 or 102% the game by doing these time trials, and also just going for platinum in general. These leaderboards definitely help, and also sees where you rank off in the world, which I actually like a lot. It's really a huge help. You might not think that leaderboards are that helpful, but having the times up there and also tracking your progress on these leaderboards, it's pretty good for people like me and that like to go for these platinums, and also people that are trying to go for like 105 and get these gold and platinum relics there. Another thing is the trophy support. The trophy support is actually in the game, so Crash the Insane Trilogy has trophies that you can earn. Each game you can platinum, and there's also a lot of hidden ones there that you actually a little weird, but also fun to get. Like one of the trophies in Crash 2 is you have to jump on this bear like 10 times until you basically beat him up, and he just spits out like 10 lives at you, and it's called like a helping paw. They're weird achievements, but they kind of make you feel like you did something fun, or you earned it, like with doing the 105%, or getting all the platinum / gold relics. You feel good about it. And then also another one, which I think is probably the biggest thing, is Coco. So in the original 3 games, you couldn't really play as Coco. Well, Crash 3 you can play as Coco, but that's for very select levels. I think there's like only 3 levels you can play as Coco, 4 levels you can play in Coco as Crash 3. But in the Insane Trilogy, you can actually play on Coco on every single level except for boss fights and certain levels that are, you know, just, you know, specific for Crash. But I'm glad that they added the whole Coco character, being able to, you know, Crash's sister Coco. You're able to play as her now in most of the levels in all 3 games, which is actually really cool. But let's wrap this up, because I basically just ran down the list of levels, the designs, the bosses, my personal, you know, pet peeves against the games, you know, the bad stuff, which is just bad hitboxes and weird controls on certain levels, and also the good stuff, which is leaderboards, trophies, and then being able to play as Coco. So how do I feel about the game? I feel like all in all, it's a really good game. It's a fun platformer. It's easy at the beginning, then it gets harder with some really intense levels, which actually are kind of fun once you get past them, and it makes you feel good about yourself. It has a lot of fun humor in there. It makes you feel good. It causes rage sometimes on the hard levels, but like I said before, it makes you feel good. So I definitely recommend getting this if you're into platforming games. If you're not into platforming games, I still recommend getting it just because it's a fun game to play. You can basically pick it up and drop it whenever you want. It's also really fun when you're playing with friends at your, you know, house or wherever you're at, just because it's kind of like a fun couch co-op game. Like you make it into a game, like let's say if you can't get past this level like in 5 attempts, you give it to your friend, then they try it, and you basically talk about it and pull your hair out together with your friends. It's just fun. It's a fun experience, even if you're not into like platformers like I am. But you know, playing with people at your house or you know, locally where you're at is definitely a lot of fun. How do I rate this game? I think with the pet peeves, I'm gonna rate it a 7 out of 10, but without it, I think it's gonna be an 8 out of 10, just because it's a really fun platformer. And there's only really a few bad things about it that, you know, the bad things really don't hurt the game that much. It does infuriate you a little bit, but it's not so much where it breaks the gameplay and, you know, it ruins the whole experience. So I definitely recommend getting this game. It's a lot of fun. You can see the live streams on my channel. I'm definitely going for 105% doing all these platinum trophies. I've even done walkthroughs, so if you guys want to see more gameplay of it, you can see the live streams and videos in the description below. And also if you want to see the boss fights, there's something there. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. That's how I feel about Crash Bandicoot, the Insane Trilogy. You know, I enjoy this game a lot, so hopefully you guys will too. Hopefully this review did help you. If it did help you, give this video a like, subscribe if you want to see more content on this channel. And I just want to say thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.